Welcome in. This is Chiefs Chase. My name is Mike Bassano, and thank you so much for joining me here on the OTA Check-In.
Can Mahomes do it? Got the P-Ryan. P-Ryan makes the move around Bernard.
OTA Day 1 is in full force for the Kansas City Chiefs. The media was allowed in, and we have a ton to get to. So many things coming out of this, so many good, interesting things to discuss. We have a full show, including an update on Josh Simmons' injury that I think is going to be very interesting as we march forward with less than 100 days till the Chiefs kick off in Brazil against the San Diego Chargers. I'm going to call them the San Diego Chargers forever because nobody in LA knows they exist. But first, the Chiefs' schedule early on is incredibly difficult. Everybody talked about it from the second the scheduling came out. The Chiefs, we knew they were going to have a tough schedule. They're the first place team. The Chiefs have a tough schedule every year, which only makes their continued dominance that much more impressive. Every year, the Chiefs have to play a first-place schedule. Every year, everybody's gunning for the Chiefs. Yet still, the rest of the AFC, not the Bills, not the Bengals, not the Broncos, not the Chargers, not the Raiders, the rest of the AFC still fails to beat the Kansas City Chiefs because no matter what happens, no matter how hard the schedule is, the Chiefs rise to the top because that's what the cream does. It rises to the tippy top. And again, in 2025, there's no reason to believe that that won't be the Chiefs once again, despite having a tough schedule early, because they always have a tough schedule. Looking at the early schedule, they have the Chargers in Brazil, the Eagles, Giants, Ravens, Jags, Lions, Commanders, Bills, Broncos. That's a murderer's row, guys. It is. There's no other way to put that. There's no other way for me to sit here and try to spin it. That, my friends, is an absolute murderer's row for the Kansas City Chiefs, especially when you consider like the Jags are the only team. And even then, the Jags could have some kind of resurgence. We could see Jacksonville be at least decent if Trevor Lawrence ever turns it around and becomes the player he was a couple of years ago. So that might not even be an easy game. But yeah, the Raiders are always a tough out. Lions, obviously. Commanders have like the hottest quarterback from last season. And then the Bills and Broncos right after that. Like, look at that stretch by itself. Just Lions, Raiders, Commanders, Bills, Broncos. Ugh. That Colts game is going to be such a nice reprieve after all this, man. So yeah, it's hard. It's a tough schedule. There is no other way to cut that. Tough schedule for the Kansas City Chiefs. I still think the Chiefs are in first place when this schedule ends. When this front end portion, I still believe the Chiefs are first place because let's not forget, they had a tough front end of the schedule last year. They had to open against the Ravens. They had the Bengals within the first 3 weeks. This was considered an incredibly tough schedule. And instead of giving the Chiefs credit for pulling out every single game last year, the Chiefs had a schedule that was arguably even harder last year than they have this year. And instead of giving the Chiefs the credit for pulling out those incredibly close games, incredibly tough games, while they were getting every team's best shot en route to the potential first three-peat in Super Bowls in the history of the NFL, instead of getting that credit, what happened? Everybody had an excuse. The Chiefs are frauds. They're being helped by the referees. Taylor Swift is running the NFL. Every single ridiculous thing anyone could come up with, it happened. And that's what made the entire scenario of the Kansas City Chiefs last year so infuriating to watch and also so much fun to watch. It was a weird rage and delight cornucopia last year for the Kansas City Chiefs, and this year should be no different. Here's Andy Reid, the head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs, on 810 WHB in Kansas City, via 810 WHB in Kansas City, at his press conference, talking about this incredibly tough schedule.
No, it's good. You know, it's quite a tour.
You don't have one of those really, you had that really tight stretch near the end last year, which is a real challenge, I know, but is this a little more spread out? I guess.
Yeah, no, look, you're playing all the teams. It doesn't matter where you're playing them. You got to play these guys, and they're doing the same thing we're doing and playing on the same days we are. So we got to get ourselves ready and go. you've only got so many weeks you can play, and you want to make sure you take advantage of that. So I don't get caught up in all that. Whenever and whatever goes, we go.
Andy Reid isn't concerned about a tough schedule. And if he was, he certainly wouldn't let us know about it. And the fact is, he's got to be used to it by now. A first-place schedule from the AFC West every year since Peyton Manning retired. Think about that. Since 2016, or really since 2015 when Manning and the Broncos won it, there has not been another team to win the AFC West. So that means every year the Chiefs have had a first-place schedule. Every year they've had to play the best of every other division. Every year they've gone head-to-head against the Bills, decided to lose to them in the regular season, show them nothing, and come back and beat them in the playoffs, which is my favorite thing in NFL history, is that the Chiefs are like 1-5 against the Bills in the regular season between Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. It's like 1-5. And then in the postseason, the Chiefs are 4-0 against the Buffalo Bills because the Chiefs are without question a better organization than the Buffalo Bills. I will give Josh Allen the fact that the Bills don't give him a lot to work with. Not only is Josh Allen working with I would say, subpar supporting cast in Buffalo, he also has Sean McDermott hanging around, who has the play-calling imagination of an ant. An ant on an anthill. That is what Sean McDermott is. If it weren't for Josh Allen, Sean McDermott would be a coordinator in college. Telling you right now. So the Chiefs, with a very tough schedule, still should, I think, be in first place by the end of October, by early November. I think they will still be in first place in the AFC West, and I really believe they'll be first place in the AFC because I'm not scared of any of these teams. The Bengals gave all their money to 3 players, and the Bills roster's not good. Josh Allen's going to have to carry that team a lot. I think he will, but there's a point to be made there. Now, there's one place where the Chiefs are going to be significantly improved over last season. And it's a place that not a lot of people are talking about. I'll tell you what that is here in just a few minutes. But first, update on Josh Simmons' injury. Andy Reid says he's further along than we thought about the torn patellar tendon. Josh Simmons has come into OTAs and looks even better than Andy Reid expected him to look, which I will just say this. The greatest argument for the NFL being rigged is the fact that Josh Simmons was able to fall to the Kansas City Chiefs at number 32. It's unbelievable that Josh Simmons was allowed to fall that badly. It makes no sense to anybody with even a halfway decent football mind. So forget all these ridiculous narratives during the season about referees and all that crap saying that the Chiefs are favored by the NFL, because that is statistically and logically untrue. However, there's only 2 options here. It's either the game's rigged for the Chiefs or every other team in the NFL is simply inept at drafting, allowing the greatest pass protector in the draft to fall to the team that has the face of the league at quarterback. That's either complete ineptitude by every other team or the NFL did it by design. And I can't imagine that the NFL actually did it by design. I'm saying this pretty tongue-in-cheek, because if the NFL did it by design, you'd have to have 31 other GMs agree to do it, which absolutely would not happen. So as much as we talk about how great the Chiefs are, and we should, we absolutely should. What drives me nuts sometimes in Kansas City is during the season, people freak out while the Chiefs are in first place. They're like, I don't think they're that good, while the Chiefs go to another Super Bowl. It drives me up a wall, the lack of positivity that I hear a lot of times from the Kansas City media. I remember a couple years ago in Kansas City during a Super Bowl season, everybody was talking about whether or not Tommy Townsend, remember Tommy Townsend, the punter, whether or not he was able to be the placeholder. We were having placeholder problems. You know what other teams have? Everything else problems. The Chiefs have placeholder problems. But my point is, while we talk about how great the Kansas City Chiefs are, and they are. The Chiefs are a great team. They're a great franchise, one of the greatest of all time. Part of the reason the Chiefs are so great is because of the ineptitude of so many other franchises in the NFL. As great as the Chiefs are, watching these other franchises just mess all over themselves in the big moments make inexplicably stupid decisions, like the Bengals paying all of their money to 3 players, or for the entire league allowing Josh Simmons, the best pass protector in the NFL draft, to fall to the Kansas City Chiefs at number 32. And now we find out that on the start of OTAs, Simmons is actually more healthy than Andy Reid would have originally thought. So not only is it good news, it is great news, because I believe that the Kansas City Chiefs really want Josh Simmons to be the day one starter. And I think that's a smart move. Josh Simmons has so much upside that even if he comes in as the day one starter and he's not unbelievably great, well, let him grow. The Chiefs are a playoff team. Anyone who says otherwise is just trying to get clicks, guys. There's a level in this job. I was a sports talk show host for almost 10 years, including in Kansas City at 610 Sports Radio for 3 of them. But here's the thing. That job, there's a balance. You have to balance getting ratings, being interesting, saying things that other people aren't necessarily saying. You have to balance that with reality. And the people who are saying the Chiefs are not a playoff team, they're not balancing their ratings chasing with reality. They're doing a bad job. So anybody who says that the Kansas City Chiefs aren't a playoff team, throw them out. Throw their take in the garbage, because that's where it belongs. Right down the garbage chute. Send it in. Because the Chiefs are a playoff team. And what that means for Josh Simmons and what that means for the offensive line is they have time to gel. Even if it's a little harsh early on, and I think it probably will be. Do I expect a rookie left tackle to step in against the Philadelphia Eagles in week 2, or really even against the Chargers in week 1 and just dominate? I think that would be a little insane. That said, could he step in and grow into that role over the first month or 2 of the season? I think a lot of that's going to depend on Josh Simmons and his work ethic. That's a thing that GMs pointed out as to why they passed on Josh Simmons. He lacked work ethic. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think that's a thing people say after they don't draft the best pass protector in the NFL or in the draft, so that they can come back later and go, no, we were right. Don't worry about it. That's how I see this playing out, but I don't know. But what I will say is, if the Chiefs come out with a Josh Simmons who is hungry, well-conditioned, and prepared to take his first snap in the NFL, then we are going to see a team that can go so much higher. If you have a left tackle that can protect Patrick Mahomes, it's going to change everything for the Kansas City Chiefs. Anybody who actually watched the Chiefs last year, instead of just watching cherry-picked calls that the referees may have gotten wrong, you know that the Chiefs, with a strong offensive line, would have gone undefeated. They would have won the Super Bowl. It wouldn't even have been a question. So that is still the biggest thing to watch for going into OTAs, going into training camp in St. Joe, and every single time the Kansas City Chiefs cross any of our minds, the number one thing we're thinking about is, can Josh Simmons get up to speed? And I think he can. I really do. And yeah, I think that's the best thing I can say for Josh Simmons. If he is right, if he gets on board, and if he is ready for week 1, and he is even decent, he doesn't have to be the best left tackle in the NFL. He doesn't have to be the best pass protector in the NFL. He just has to be decent. And that is when we will see Josh Simmons transform the Chiefs offense. We don't need perfection. We need decent. Can't wait to see it. I'm so fired up for it. All right, now one of the biggest pieces for the Kansas City Chiefs, his contract is a bit up in the air, but that might change very soon. We'll tell you what that is and who that is coming up here in just a few minutes. But first, there's one place where the Chiefs are going to be significantly improved over last season, The Chiefs' wide receiver room, if healthy, is going to win Patrick Mahomes an MVP. The Chiefs never got a chance to see Hollywood Brown, Rashee Rice, and Xavier Worthy all on the field at the same time last year because of injuries to Hollywood Brown and then Rashee Rice. But both Brown and Rice are back healthy. Xavier Worthy looks even faster than he did last year. And the fact is, the Kansas City Chiefs are in position to dominate the AFC with their weapons on offense. You add in a Jalen Royals that's already making waves with the Kansas City Chiefs as a rookie, and now you have depth, you have explosive speed, and you have dynamic players all across the wide receiver core for the Kansas City Chiefs. If they can stay healthy now, it will shift everything. Because that's something people didn't talk about enough last year. People said, well, Patrick Mahomes is a game manager. Patrick Mahomes lost his top 2 wide receivers before the end of September. And he had to navigate that throughout the entire season with his best wide receiver being a rookie in Xavier Worthy, and he made Xavier Worthy a superstar. So don't tell me that Patrick Mahomes won't win the MVP this season, because had Patrick Mahomes had his supporting cast and a little bit more time in the pocket last year, his entire stat line would have looked astronomically different. And it would have been huge. We would have seen top flight Patrick Mahomes. 2022 Patrick Mahomes. And I think this year we will see that. I think he has an upgrade in protection all across the board. You have better protection on the offensive line, and you have healthy wide receivers. When you add better protection on the offensive line and healthier wide receivers, there will be improvement. Now, Travis Kelce, he's dropped some weight. He knows this is his last ride. He hasn't come out and say it. I think it's smart. I think it's smart for Travis Kelce to not come out and say, hey guys, this is my last season. I think that's a really smart decision by Travis. But I will say this. This is Travis's last season. I think everybody feels it. So with him coming into his last season, he said he's dropped almost 20 pounds. He's going to get faster, leaner. He's going to put up probably even better numbers. And when you consider he could have had 1,000 yards last year. Like, it's weird. I think sometimes with star players, the bar is set at a somewhat unrealistic level. While Travis didn't have the season last year statistically that he wanted, he was also keyed on consistently because Rashee Rice was down. Hollywood Brown was down. In fact, when you saw DeAndre Hopkins come into the fold, we started to see Travis Kelce get more touches. When you can get more weapons around Travis, he's going to immediately get better. And now that you have him even more focused on fitness than he was last season, you're going to have a Travis Kelce come in who's going to make real waves in the NFL this year. I'm not saying he's going to turn back the clock and be 28 again. He might feel 22 sometimes, but I'm telling you this, Travis Kelce this year will be a force to be reckoned with, and no team in the NFL is going to take him lightly. Fan bases might, because they don't know what's going on, but no team in the NFL looks at Travis Kelce and says, we don't got to worry about number 87. So you have Travis in there with that wide receiver core, with the improved offensive line. The Kansas City Chiefs offense is going to be significantly better than it was last year. And last year, they won 15 games and went to the Super Bowl. Get fired up, baby. Get fired up.
Flag, but he won't. Murray coming on a blitz now and wide open. It's Kelce. Breaks the tackle, still going. Travis Kelce. Down near the 6.
Now, there is a new Chiefs player who's already making waves in his first day in a Chiefs practice uniform. It's exciting. We'll tell you exactly who that is and what we can expect to see from him coming up in just a few minutes. But first, one of the biggest pieces of the Kansas City Chiefs has his contract a little up in the air as George Karlaftis got the 5th-year option picked up on his contract. Now that means they will likely try to negotiate some kind of extension. They'll do the same with Trent McDuffie. They'll try to find some kind of extension with these guys during the season so they don't have to go into the offseason in limbo. That's the goal, if everything makes sense. And that's what you hope for, and you hope that George Karlaftis is that guy. Now we have some news from today. Something George Karlaftis said while at OTAs that's going to make the probability of him re-signing with the Kansas City Chiefs very quickly go way up. Karlaftis said, quote, I'd like to be here as long as I can, my now fiance and I absolutely love Kansas City and love this organization. I'll let whoever handles my contract handle that, but I love it here. Look, even if that's just saying what people want to hear, even if that is just George Karlaftis saying what he thinks we want to hear, saying, hey, I want to be in Kansas City forever, at least he's playing the game right. How many times do we see guys be like, man, I better get paid or I'm out of here, or guys try to skirt the question? Karlaftis answered it straight on, and I have no reason to believe that he's not being 100% truthful. It's awesome to play for a contender every year. It's amazing. Everybody talks about, well, you want to take care of your family, you want to take care of your generational wealth. Absolutely. I understand that. But ask Tyreek Hill how happy he is not competing for championships, knowing pretty early on in the season that there's not a very good chance they're going to win a championship. When you play mediocre to losing football during a full NFL season, it is soul-crushing. Every NFL player talks about it. When you know you have a team that has no real chance of competing, it's just a job, right? You like playing the game. Of course you like playing the game, but it's a job. You want to compete for championships. You want to compete for titles. And George Karlaftis, Trent McDuffie, and every other player on the Kansas City Chiefs, they know, hey, if I stay here, I can compete for titles. That's what they want to do. That's what every player wants to do. And kudos to the Chiefs, by the way. Kudos to Brett Veach and Andy Reid, because they tend to bring in guys who are like George Karlaftis, and Trent McDuffie, by the way, who kind of understand. Is money the most important thing? We're all going to make money. You know what I mean? Like, that's part of this. You're going to make money. Patrick Mahomes signed a contract that's extremely team-friendly, but Patrick Mahomes is not going to the poorhouse anytime soon. You know what I mean? So often, I understand getting the huge money. I don't want to tell somebody to make less money than they're worth. But you have to ask yourself, when you draft a player, and I think Veach and Randy do a great job of this, you have to ask yourself, is this a guy that wants to make a ton of money? Or is this a guy that wants to win football games? Because there is a difference. And I'm not saying either one is better or worse, but I'm saying if I'm the Kansas City Chiefs, I'm probably going with the guy that I think will give us a team-friendly deal because he wants to win championships. I'm going with the guy that I think isn't going to leave you for a huge paycheck and leave you high and dry because he wants to chase the money. That's the type of personality the Kansas City Chiefs go after. They go after guys who want to win, guys who aren't as obsessed with money. That's part of the draft process. You get to interview these guys. Well, part of interviewing is making sure that you know what drives them. What drives you as a human being? And for a lot of guys, money is what drives them, and that's okay. But I notice more and more with the Kansas City Chiefs that what drives a lot of the players that the Chiefs select is trying to be great, legacy, playing for championships. Because your day-to-day in the NFL, when you're playing for a championship team versus when you're playing for a bottom feeder, is night and day. Your day-to-day is 10 times better, and why don't you look to some of those other losing teams, some of those guys who left? Go ask Tyreek Hill how depressed he is on a day-to-day basis, knowing the chances of the Miami Dolphins ever winning the Super Bowl are such a long shot, and he still has to show up to work every single day. So I think it's smart for the Kansas City Chiefs that they make a point to go after these guys who don't necessarily want the money as much as they want the legacy and the championships. George Karlaftis, based on what he said, seems like that kind of guy. Also, speaking of George Karlaftis, and a rookie for the Kansas City Chiefs, big time pickup in Ashton Gelati. It looks like as a pass rusher, a draft pick for the Kansas City Chiefs this year, it looks like Gelati's going to be very good for the Kansas City Chiefs, and he has some connection to George Karlaftis. Here's George via Sports Radio WHB Sports. Sorry. Here's George via Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City.
Crazy coincidence, because I've known Ashton for a few years now. We had the staff that I had under Purdue, who I absolutely love, like family. Coach Brom, Mark Hagan, Dominic Reno, all those guys. After I left, and they went to Louisville, and they had Ashton, and we were just raving about him. So, I spent a lot of the off season out there training with those guys, and took him, and showed him some stuff and helped him out as much as I could, give him my number, and say, hey, if you have any questions, ask me. And it's kind of been a great relationship. I want to help him out as much as I can. And I was overseas when the draft was going on. I had like 50 messages like, "Hey, Ashton got drafted. It's crazy," and all that stuff. So, really happy to have him. I think he'll be a great addition.
What is it about his game that impresses you?
I think first and foremost, as a defensive end, as a defensive player, tenacity and the effort will never betray you. So definitely that, and that sticks out. He's a strong kid. He wants to be good. He's humble and he's a hard worker. All that is aside from all the great physical attributes he has. So I think he'll be a great player.
George Karlaftis, baby. I love me some George Karlaftis. He is kind of the quintessential Chief in my mind. When I see George, I think that guy is the quintessential Chief, and I would love to have him on the team his whole career. And every year, he gets better. Every year, he improves. And he was already really good when he got to Kansas City out of Purdue. But ever since he got to Kansas City, we have seen marked improvement from George Karlaftis on a year-to-year basis. So if you're looking at somebody to sign to a long-term deal, that kind of personality is exactly what you're looking for. And Ashton Gillotte added to the mix, gotta get you fired up. Because how many pass rushers do you need, guys? We talk about this all the time. How many pass rushers do you need? More. That's always the answer. Huge time here to hear about to hear from George Karlaftis about Ashton Gillotte, man. That's awesome. All right, now there's a crazy narrative that's always surrounding the Kansas City Chiefs, and we're gonna crush it coming up in just a few minutes. But first, there's a new name in Kansas City, and he's already making waves even in his first year and first practice in a Chiefs practice jersey, and that is Jalen Royals. Here's the thing. According to Chiefs Talk, Jalen Royals made the play of the day at OTAs with a big-time grab in 7-on-7, and he had one of, if not the best practice of anybody out there. And that's according to Chiefs Talk on Instagram. Here's the deal. If Jalen Royals can come along early and be a big-time wide receiver for the Chiefs in his rookie year, then there is no ceiling for this team. Because you already have a stacked wide receiver core. You already have Rashee Rice, Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy, who had one of the best rookie campaigns you could ever possibly hope for a wide receiver. When you add all of that together, then you plug in Jalen Royals. Even if he's the fourth option, he's depth. And even without, if you don't need the depth, you have a great fourth option. This is the NFL. You need as many great options at wide receiver as humanly possible, because the ability to spread out the defense and make things easier for Patrick Mahomes would mean everything for the Kansas City Chiefs. And making things easy for Patrick Mahomes, oh, what a concept. Wouldn't that be nice? After the guy's running for his life the entire season, running for his life in the Super Bowl, having all of his wide receivers go down all the time, wouldn't it be nice if for once everything fell right for Patrick Mahomes? Because even when it doesn't, Patrick Mahomes is still the best quarterback in the NFL, and he still won 15 games in the regular season, still won his way through the AFC Championship to the Super Bowl last year, despite the injuries, despite the lack of protection on the offensive line. So if those things are right, and then you add in Jalen Royals as depth and a great fourth option, then the Kansas City Chiefs could have a juggernaut offense that is absolutely unstoppable, and Patrick Mahomes will walk away once again with the MVP. His third. Hell yeah, Jalen Royals. Here's the thing. He has so much upside. Like, Jalen Royals has so much upside, and you know he has the right people around him to help him get better. Because that's a big deal, too. There's a lot to be made about culture. The Kansas City Chiefs have an amazing culture. We've talked about it over and over again. There's a reason why guys come in and are instantly successful in Kansas City. There's a reason why draft picks come in and elevate their game significantly in Kansas City. And it's not because the Chiefs are only good at drafting really good players. They're good at developing these players. So a guy like Jalen Royals, if he comes in, and let's say Jalen's able to get 30% of the snaps, which would be a pretty sizable number for a guy in his position. That's a huge win for him, and if he's able to earn that time, then it's a huge win for the Kansas City Chiefs. Jalen Royals is a big name to keep an eye on. I wasn't sure about him when they drafted him, but frankly, I just didn't know. I mean, it wasn't, I don't know. I didn't watch a lot of Jalen Royals in college. So I didn't know really what he was going to bring to the table. But the early reports out of OTAs is that he is hitting the ground running and going to make a real impact on this team in his rookie year. And that gets me so fired up, man. Jalen Royals.
Second and long, Lagar tries to fit it into Royals. It does! Royals stays up and shows off his 4-3 wheels.
Let's go, man. This is how the Chiefs draft. It's how the Chiefs draft, and it's why they always win. They've had some misses at wide receiver here and there, but Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, that's in 2 years. So now here's another guy. Let's see what happens. Very intrigued. Now, I'll leave off today with one player the Chiefs have let me rephrase this. There's one player on the Chiefs that a lot of people wish was already cut. But there's good news about him, promising maybe even some news creating optimism about him that happened today at OTAs. We'll tell you who that is and what the news is coming up in just a few minutes. But first, the crazy narrative that's always surrounding the Kansas City Chiefs. It's always there, and we can't get rid of it. It's the worst narrative of all sports. And the narrative is that the Chiefs quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, is carried. It's a ridiculous narrative. It makes no sense. And I think it's from people who either don't watch the games and want to follow whatever they see on social media, or people who are just actual idiots. I honestly don't know. They might need to check their intelligence at the door and maybe just stop talking. I'm not sure. But there's an interesting vindication that just came out from Fox Sports last night, as Fox Sports decided to rank the best supporting casts in the NFL. Shall we get to the ranking? Let's see. Once you actually look at the big picture and stop following your stupid social media narratives, let's see how much Patrick Mahomes is carried by the Chiefs. Supporting casts ranked by Fox Sports. I'll just give the top 10. Number 1, the Eagles. Yeah. Number 2, Vikings. Number 3, Lions. Number 4, Bengals. Number 5, Bucks. Number 6, Rams. Number 7, 49ers. Number 8, Ravens. Number 9, Falcons. Number 10, the Kansas City Chiefs. Number 10 in supporting cast is the Kansas City Chiefs. Yet everybody wants to tell me that Patrick Mahomes gets carried by the rest of the team in what is, without question, the dumbest take in the history of sports. Anybody who says that Patrick Mahomes is carried or that Patrick Mahomes is underrated, they're not allowed to have sport takes for the rest of their life. They're just the most ignorant people I've ever come across. Because here's the deal. Patrick Mahomes has dealt with injuries at wide receiver last year. He dealt with having no protection last year, and yet he still willed the Chiefs to wins over and over again. Those close games the Chiefs won, they won most of the time because of Patrick Mahomes, because Pat has the innate ability to put the team on his back, though, when the team really needs it. That's why the Chiefs are so successful. They're a good team without Patrick Mahomes, but they are only a great team because of Patrick Mahomes. And the only contender with a worse supporting cast would be the Buffalo Bills at number 14. That's where they were ranked. Bills at 14. Now, the Chiefs have a lot of good players, but we will not take a Mahomes slander in this dojo. It's the reason there's so much defense of Patrick Mahomes on this show is because there's so much slander of Patrick Mahomes all over the NFL. It's all these clowns that can't figure out why their brains don't work, so they have to come after Patrick Mahomes, who is the most underrated quarterback in the NFL. Because he was able to take a bunch of wide receivers that nobody had ever heard of last year after Hollywood Brown and Rashee Rice went down very early in the season. And he was able to take that team to 15-1. Didn't lose that last game. Those were all backups. So he was able to take that team to 15 wins. A lot of those wins, he just gutted out by being a gritty badass that Patrick Mahomes is. And then took the Chiefs all the way to the Super Bowl. So anybody who says Patrick Mahomes is overrated, I argue he is underrated Probably one of the most underrated quarterbacks we've ever seen because of the amount of hate that he gets. And frankly, when Tom Brady was playing, he was underrated too. Tom Brady was underrated because everybody just wanted him to lose. So it was always, oh, it's all Bill Belichick. Oh, it's all everybody else. Well, Bill Belichick's in college listening to his girlfriend right now. What's the Patriots doing? The Patriots have the 32nd best team in the NFL now without Tom Brady. So what we learned after the exodus of Tom Brady is not only was he not overrated, he might have been the most underrated player in the history of the NFL. And number 2 on that list is probably Patrick Mahomes because everyone's doing the same thing to Patrick. They're like, oh, it's this, it's that. Andy Reid was a coach for how long? 20 years before Patrick Mahomes was his starter, and he never won a Super Bowl. With Pat, he's won 3. Stop putting disrespect on the Mahomes name because you only end up making yourself look like a total ignoramus. Moving on here in a second, but quick, a little bonus. Xavier Worthy at OTAs today had a chance to talk about his progression from his rookie year to his second year. Here he is, courtesy of Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City.
I feel mentally, I feel like I'm the same as last year, just the physical aspect. Last year I was hurt, and this year I'm kind of getting into it, and I kind of got a better feel for things.
Xavier, how important was the second half of last year and moving around a little bit to your comfort of just wherever you're placed in the offense this year?
Yeah, like you said, the end of last year was kind of like a stepping stone for me. Just learning and kind of getting a better feel for what Pat likes, and I started feeling like that, got better at the end of the year, so just continue that and use that momentum.
Fired up for year 2 of Xavier Worthy, man. If he can add on to what he did last year, he's going to be even more successful. And it might not show up in the numbers because you have a healthy Rashee Rice, you have a healthy Hollywood Brown, but that's not what's important. Numbers don't matter. Numbers matter for nerds and people that don't know what they're watching. That's the truth. If you don't know what you're watching, if you're like, I don't understand, then you look to stats. But the problem is you have a lot of people who don't know what they're watching, then they look to stats and pretend to know what they're watching. So you might see a dip in Xavier Worthy's production purely because they have other options on offense that they can go to. But even if that happens, he could still have a better year. He could still be a better player. And that will be even more beneficial for the overall, for the top to bottom Kansas City Chiefs. Now, before we get out of here, reports out of OTAs have Sky Moore looking bigger. I said it was somebody that Chiefs fans didn't even want on the team anymore. There's a lot of Chiefs fans that would like to see Sky Moore cut, no longer on the Chiefs. But he's still in Kansas City. He's still at OTAs, and he does look more muscular than he has in previous seasons, and people are talking about it. What does that mean? I do not know, but the Chiefs aren't quitting on Sky Moore. What does that tell you? What does it tell you? The Chiefs not quitting on Sky Moore. It says that he's putting in the work. Sky Moore has got to be a hard worker. You have to know that Sky Moore is a hard worker because his production hasn't been there. But the Chiefs have consistently kept Sky Moore around because they see something in Sky Moore. They see something special. If they didn't, Sky Moore would be somewhere rapping with Kadarius Toney. So I think it's a reason to get excited for Sky Moore that he showed up with a little more muscle to OTAs. He looks good. And even with the past, we can move on from that if Sky Moore comes out and makes some plays because that's all we want. And if the Kansas City Chiefs still believe in Sky Moore, I see no reason why the rest of us shouldn't find it deep in our heart to gain a little more belief in Sky Moore. I'm rooting for him, and I know all of you are too. Let's go, Sky. Bring it back around, baby. Silence the doubters. And I'm one of the doubters. But I'd love to be silenced by Sky Moore. 100%. That would be awesome. All right, that's it. That's the Chiefs Chase OTAs check-in, right? All right, it's awesome. We're going to keep doing the show throughout the entire offseason because I just love doing the show, and I love the fact that you guys are here. You're listening. You care. Even if it's 2 of you, I do not care. I will be here for you and give you the best show I have every single time. So thank you so much for listening. Have an awesome rest of your week. Have an awesome weekend. And know that all of you mean a lot to me. See you next time.
I kind of like blacked out a little bit. It didn't feel real.
Audible called by Patrick Mahomes.
Tag goes like this to KT. If you see me like on the film, I'm like, nah, like, this one's over here. So he looked over at me, gave me a motion, everything started slowing down.
Ball will be snapped. Left side wide open, Sky Moore.
It was one of those, it's so easy of a catch that, like, you don't want to drop it.